All right. Yesterday we were on, we started Parsha Mattos, page 900. And the first thing is we want to understand over here. Yesterday we started speaking about how to, somebody who makes a neder. We were speaking yesterday about the fact that you could actually be released from your neder. Remember we spoke about that. If you made the neder under mistaken circumstances. For example, you thought you'd be able to withstand it. You know, that's also a reason that a person needs release. A person may have good intentions. I think you asked yesterday. Again, your name is?
I'm Dylan.
Dylan. Where are you from?
St. Louis, Missouri.
St. Louis. Yeah. St. Louis had a lot to do with an unhappy youth that I had. The Cardinals. The Cardinals were always good. The Cardinals. St. Louis Cardinals.
Not this year.
They always were good though. Even when they shouldn't have been good. Even when they shouldn't have been good, they were good. And the Cubs, when they should have been good, were bad. But whatever the case, St. Louis is a nice place. The arch is still it's the biggest arch in the world, in the biggest arch in the world, and it is the exact same height and width. The height of the arch and the width of the arch are the exact same measure. And I happen to know that for a fact because I just saw it yesterday, 2 days ago in Ami Magazine's children's section, which is the best part of the paper. You know, who's interested is the children. They got all the interesting facts. In any event, Dylan asked yesterday about, with a certain amount of skepticism, I think, about people being released from their what. So the answer is that sometimes in life you make a commitment and you bit off more than you could chew. That happens. And sometimes a person with good intention. Now, a person had a really good intention, and that happens periodically. A person's very, very inspired about something, and then they just realize, I can't hold up to it. I can't. And that's their fault, and you got to be careful. That's why you have to be careful when you make the original neder, not to be reckless with it. But there are certain times in life where a person feels, listen, I feel I'm out of control. I'm having too much. I'm eating too much meat, and I'm out of control. I want to do something to put the skids on. So I think I'll go 30 days without meat. And that was really my intent at the time. But had I known at that time, genuinely had I known at the time, that there was a piece of meat available that I'd never ever had in my life, and I really liked, I would not have made it. That means, what it really means, just 1 second, Tom. What it means is that at the time I made the neder, that I'm not going to eat meat, had you said to me, by the way, 2 weeks from now there's going to be a ribeye steak, I wouldn't have made the neder. I wouldn't have made the neder. And that's a release. Okay. Now, there's another concept here we want to get to. What did you want to ask, Tano, very quickly?
I just want to know, about last week's question about Pinchas quickly.
Let's stick with it. Pinchas is still alive. We have plenty of time to get to him. How did he get to be Eliyahu?
No, how did he get the name Eliyahu?
Oh, how did he get the name Eliyahu? Because there's later, I don't know. It doesn't say where his name was transferred. It just says he became Eliyahu. And Eliyahu Navi, the Nach introduces that there's a man named Eliyahu. Our tradition is Pinchas is Eliyahu. And not only that, we meet Pinchas every month, by the way. Every month we meet Pinchas. On Rosh Chodesh, where do we meet him? Where do we meet him on Rosh Chodesh? In the Torah reading. The Torah reading every month, we read the reading is from the Parsha's Pinchas. So Pinchas is always with us. And Eliyahu Navi, like the Tanel said, Eliyahu Navi comes to every bris. But let's stick with what we're talking about now. So we're talking about the Nidar. Now, what do you call it? The Torah then goes on, that's as far as releasing a vow. Now we're going to go to a completely different concept, which is voiding a vow, nullifying a vow, or voiding a vow. If you take a look at the 4th line, the Isha kisidor neder la Hashem, when a woman makes a vow, the Osra Isar bevesa via binurea, and she binds herself with a vow while she's in her father's house. Vishama avia es nidra ve'es asar asher osra al nafsha. Her father hears the neder, or the limitation that she made. Vehecheri shla aviha, and her father is silent. He doesn't react. He hears his daughter make a vow that she says like she's going to vow not to eat meat for a month, or not to drink wine. V'kamu kol nidarev v'chol isar asher asra nafsha yakum. Now, what about then? The vow is fully in state. V'im heini avia osa b'yom shamo kol nedarev esera. If the father hears her vows, asher osra al nafsha lo yakum, v'Hashem yislach la ki heini avia osa. That means if a man hears his daughter make a vow, and the daughter says, I vow not to use cosmetics for a month. All the father has to say is Vitto, and the vow is not in force. And this applies to a married woman as well. If a married woman makes a vow, her husband has veto power on the vow. When she makes the vow, he has until sunset of the day that he's heard about. Now, let's say a man travels. Hold all the questions. I'll get to. Let me just go through it first. A man travels, and he comes home a week later, and his wife says, "Oh, by the way, I made a vow that I'm not going to be using cosmetics for a month." And her husband has now till nightfall on the day that he's heard about the vow. He has till nightfall to say veto, and the vow is no longer in place. Why is that? So Rav Hirsch, I wanted to read it out to you. His terminology is very beautiful. Rav Hirsch says a woman is responsible, for the most part, for the upbeat feeling and the happiness and the joy of the home. A woman is the one who creates the mood in the home. A woman, because she might be a little bit more emotional, so something happened, the washing machine broke, so she decided she's not putting on cosmetics for a month. Right, or she decides she's not going to eat what do you call it? She's not going to drink Diet Coke for a month because the washing machine broke. That may affect her mood because this may be a woman who needs to, if she feels better when she's wearing cosmetics. Her husband certainly feels better. What do you call it? I heard once about a bride and groom were once in the car. Husband and the couple got married. They're married for about a couple of weeks. And they're driving along, and the husband keeps glancing at his new bride, and she's blushing because he keeps looking at her, and he keeps looking at her, and she's like, oof, she's just like, wow, he keeps looking at her, and finally says to her, Rachel, I just want to tell you something. No matter how poor we ever become, we'll always be able to afford cosmetics for you. Just a story. The what do you call it? So the husband. What happens is the wife is really the one who sets the tone in the home. We can't afford to have a woman who, in a certain agitated state, puts herself in a situation where now she's going to be tense and nervous, and the husband, who has a little bit more, he's a little bit more overseeing everything, he says veto. So the Torah gives him veto power. The Torah gives the husband veto power on most of the wife's vows, on any vow that affects her and could affect her mood. That's what the Torah says. Now, hold all the questions for a second. I'm not going into all the halachas now. I want to get to a certain point here. You skip on ahead now and take a look at Pasuk 16. The Torah goes through the details of what he called of if he doesn't veto, if he does veto, the father, the husband. The Torah goes through all the technical points. Skip ahead to Pasuk 16 on 902. The Torah says over here like this. It's 6 lines from the bottom. 6 lines from the bottom. Is talk about a married woman. If her husband is silent when he hears the vow, mi yom el yom, meaning to the end of the day, that means he is substantiated her vows. The husband has substantiated his wife's vows. That means if he doesn't veto it, the wife's vows are, the wife's vows are in force. If he does annul them, Vinasa es avona, he bears her iniquity. Now, what does that mean? If the husband annuls the vow, he bears the avera. What avera was there? She made a vow. She vowed off a red meat, and the husband says veto. And the Torah says he bears the sin. What is the avera? In order to understand that, we have to go back to Pasuk Hey. Now, look at Pasuk Hey. Pasuk Vav. 4 lines from the bottom on the previous page. If the father does move the vow, lo yakum, 2 lines from the bottom. The vows shall not be fulfilled for the girl if the father vowed. V'Hashem yislach lo, Hashem should forgive her, ki heini avia osa, because her father has annulled the vow. Why is Hashem forgiving her? Why does Hashem need to forgive her? And what is it over here that the Torah says that the husband bears the sin? What sin was there? In both cases, it's either a father or a husband who annulled the vow. Yet the Torah says, V'Hashem yislach lo. Now let's take it even deeper. The Gemara says that Rabbi Akiva, the same Rabbi Akiva that you're learning about in the Gemara in Baba Metzia, same Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara says when he would get to this pasuk, V'Hashem yislach lo ki heniya ve'osa, Rabbi Akiva would cry when he got to this pasuk. That Hashem should forgive her where her husband is annulled the vow, Rabbi Akiva would cry. So Akiva crying about? For several questions. First of all, why is Rabbi Akiva crying? Second of all, why is it that specifically Rabbi Akiva cried when he got to this vow? Why didn't I? Other time, Rava and Abaye also read this pasuk. Rabbi Gamliel also, Rabbi Shammai also read this pasuk. Why did Rabbi Akiva cry when he got to this vow? So to understand that, we have to see the Rashi. Okay, stay with it, gentlemen. It's a fascinating concept. Stay with it. Take a look at the Rashi. On pasuk, it's the left column of Rashi. Right in the middle of the left column of Rashi. If you find it, please show the person next to you. V'Hashem yislach lo. Hashem should forgive her. So Rashi says over here, Bima kosuv medaber. What is the pasuk talking about? If you find it, please make sure the person next to you has it. Bima kosuv, page 900, right in the middle of the Rashi, left column. What is the pasuk talking about? Be'isha shenadra benazir. A woman made a vow to be a Nazirite. Vishama Bala, her husband heard, Vehefer law, and the husband vetoed it. So a woman's in the kitchen, she goes, you know what, I think I'm going to be a Nazirite. The husband's reading the newspaper in the other room, and he hears her, veto, just like that. It's automatically vetoed. He declassified it, like I told you yesterday. He vetoed her, he annulled her vow. So she vowed to be a Nazirite, which means she can't drink wine and she can't all the limitations, and the husband vetoed it. And she velo yada, she didn't know. Women don't have to know everything. The Yoveres al Nidra, and then she transgresses her vow. Vishosa yain umetam lamesim. She drinks wine or comes into contact with dead bodies, which a Nazirite is not allowed. Now, is she done an Avera? Why not? Because she's not a Nazirite. Why not? Because he vetoed it. Yet zohi shetzricha slicha. She needs forgiveness. Ve'afal pishu mufar, even though it was vetoed already. Why? Oh, good question. Take a look at Rashi. Ve'im hamufarim srichin slicha. If those which are already vetoed need forgiveness, kal v'chomer l'sheinan, certainly the ones that are not vetoed. What is going on here? And then we go to the next pasuk. One second, we're going to put it all together in a second. And you look back on 902, and again it says, at the bottom it says, V'im hafer yofer osam acharei sham'o, 4 lines from the bottom. If the husband vetoes the oath, v'nosas avona, he bears her iniquity. What iniquity is it? What sin did she do? So the answer is like this. Imagine I open the refrigerator at home, and I see a cheeseburger, and it's in a McDonald's wrapper. And I look around, and there's nobody in the room. I'm like, yeah, this is finally my chance. I've always wondered, about 30 billion others have tasted it. I want to get on board too. I look around, and I don't make a bracha, because you don't make a bracha when you're going to sin, all right? And I take a bite. And just then my brother walks in the room and he says, how was it? I go, oh, you saw? He goes, yeah, of course I saw. I put it there. I said, what are you doing at the McDonald's hamburger? He says, it's not a McDonald's, it's a kosher burger. I just decided to put it in a McDonald's wrapper. It's parva cheese and it's a kosher burger. Now, do I need an atonement or not? All right, I didn't make a bracha. That's a problem. But forget that. Let's say I had made a motzi on something else. So just in case I made a motzi on something else. Do I need an atonement or not? I was intending to sin and I needed an atonement. So Rashi says, if you intended to sin and you need an atonement, all the more so when you intended to sin and you actually sinned. You need an atonement. So one second, I'll get to you 1 second. So forgiveness. Okay, you said it. You're the one who brought it up, the atonement. But the forgiveness, it's a kapara. You need so the what do you call it? The Atanu lefanecha rachem aleinu. So you need slichot. Hey, Elul is coming, all you Sephardim. You got 40 days of it. Ashkenazim, we scrape through a week and we're doing. Yeah. You guys get up at 5 in the morning for 40 days. Yeah, I hear you guys. Yeah, then they tell me, but we get to eat rice on Pesach. You can have your rice. Go ahead. You take your rice. I'll sleep. I'll sleep in Elul. So yeah, an atonement means you need forgiveness. Why do you need forgiveness? You intended to do something wrong. Now, what did this woman do? She made a vow. You asked Nathan. You asked what a Nazarite. A Nazarite is a certain status. Forget even if she's let's say she vowed not to drink wine. And the husband vetoed it, and she didn't hear about it. And then one day she decides, you know what? I'm going to sin. I'm going to drink wine. Now she drinks wine, but it's technically not a sin. Again, your first name is?
Alan.
Ellen. Like Ellen said, she hasn't sinned. Yeah, but a tzaddikus, she isn't, right? That is not, she's certainly not. Yet she needs an atonement, even though she didn't do something wrong. Says the Torah, and Pasuk 6, the following Pasuk, when the husband annuls the vows, then he gets tagged with a sin. What sin does he get tagged with? He gets tagged with her intention to do the Avera. Is that what you're going to say, Mayor? He gets tagged with her negative intent because he's the one who caused that to happen by not announcing loudly that he's vetoing the neder. So she was, had he vetoed it completely, she wouldn't even be able to intend to do something wrong. She intended to do something wrong because he vetoed it quietly. Had he vetoed it out loud, so then she wouldn't even have the enjoyment of intending to do something wrong. Oh, you took away all my fun. It's kosher. Forget it. I wanted to eat nothing not kosher, and now you tell me you took away all the fun. So the what do you call it? The Torah is telling you over here two things. Number one, when you intend to do something wrong, even if it's not technically wrong. What's the problem? It's just a friendly neder Vitto. That's the Vitto bug. My goodness, what a bunch of wimps! My goodness.
Rabbi,
Why, my good. What do you think it was? It's not an eagle. So what? It's a friendly chumash wasp. See, what do you call it? He also wants to veto his wife's neder. So what do you call it? He's got issues at home. What do you think? So number one, you are. Now hold all the questions for a few minutes yet. Yeah, I want to get to another point here. This is all an introduction. It's all an introduction. Number one, you are accountable for things you intended to do wrong, even if you didn't manage to do it wrong. You don't even know how to sin properly, right? They can't even trust you to sin properly. Okay. Number two, if you cause a stumbling block for somebody, in this case, the husband caused the stumbling block that allowed her to intend to do something wrong by not vetoing it out loud.
But she was planning on doing it anyway.
Right, but had he said veto, she would not have even intended to do something wrong because she would have known that it's vetoed. Okay? Now, Vitto is also an Italian name, by the way. The husband, don't yell at all, Vitto! The wife thinks you're calling the mafia on her. Yeah, be careful. So what do you call it? That was his name. The Godfather was Vitto Corleone, right? Vitto, Don Vitto Corleone, right? I tell you, I know, because I was planning, it was a possible career choice for me before I became a rabbi. It's a good parnasa, don't knock it, David. So the what do you call it? Okay, now, let's take it a step further. Hold all the questions and comments for a few more minutes. I want to take this much deeper now. The Gemara says that when Rabbi Akiva read this pasuk, Rabbi Akiva cried. Why was Rabbi Akiva crying here? Hashem should forgive her. She intended to do bad, and it turned out wasn't. Yet Rabbi Akiva cried. So the Kabbalist, the Arizal, says that we're going to read on Tisha B'Av and on Yom Kippur. We read about the 10 martyrs, and if you read in the dirge, the way the dirge is formulated, there's a conversation. You remember in Yom Kippur, it's a conversation between the Roman emperor and the 10 sages, Rabbi Ishmael, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Chanan ben Terai. And the Roman emperor says, listen, in the Torah, Your Torah, it says that if a man kidnaps and sells somebody, he's liable for the death penalty. The brothers of Yosef kidnapped Yosef and sold him, but we never find that they got punished. And never in history have there been 10 sages at your level, and therefore you will now be, you'll get the punishment that Yosef's brothers should have gotten for violating your own Torah. Obviously the Roman emperor is looking for an excuse to kill them anyway, so all of a sudden he becomes very frum and he starts quoting the Chumash, right? The Roman emperor had other issues that he didn't keep, right? He didn't keep all the halachas, but this one all of a sudden he became very meticulous. So he says them in the dirge. That's the way it's formulated, is a conversation between the Roman emperor and these 10 sages. Now, first of all, there are commentaries that say the conversation couldn't have taken place. It's only poetic license because these 10 sages didn't even live in the same generation. They weren't even alive at the same time. But that's what it says in the Machzor on Yom Kippur when the conversation takes place. The Arizal says that the brothers of Yosef came back in a reincarnation into these 10 sages. And the brother that was Shimon, how many people from the tribe of Shimon fell?
24,000.
24,000. You know anybody else in history who had 24,000 disciples who died? Rabbi Akiva. The Arizal says Rabbi Akiva of the 10 sages was a reincarnation of Shimon. And Shimon, who was the brother who was the catalyst of the sale of Yosef. So Rabbi Akiva, as a reincarnation of Shimon, sensed, whether consciously or subconsciously, that when he came to this pasuk, and he realizes, because what happened to the brothers, Yosef even said to the brothers, you intended for something negative, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he said to the brothers, don't be upset. You kidnapped me and you sold me with intent for something negative, but at the end of the day, it all turned out well, because now I'm the viceroy and I can support you and the family and everything. They all lived happily ever after, as the storybooks say. So Yosef comforted the brothers with that. But Rabbi Akiva, as a reincarnation of Shimon, when he read this pasuk and he realized, ooh, when you do something with negative intent, you're still accountable for it. So at a certain level, the Arizal says that Rabbi Akiva was a reincarnation. They were all reincarnations of the brothers. They were Gilgulim. A Gilgul is a reincarnation. Rabbi Akiva was Shimon, and because Shimon was the catalyst of the sale, Rabbi Akiva realized when he read this pasuk that there's going to be some sort of accountability. And sure enough, of the 10 martyrs, the one that's arguably gets the worst punishment was Rabbi Akiva, who they scraped his flesh off with iron combs. And that's why Rabbi Akiva, of all people, cried when he saw this pasuk. Because somehow this pasuk touched something at some level of Rabbi Akiva where he realized that there was going to be some sort of accountability. Okay? Yes, Eli, go ahead.
So maybe I'm wrong here, but I'm wondering.
I'll be the first to let you know if you are, though. Don't worry.
Rabbi.
Go ahead.
If
you're going to ask me about reincarnation, I can't tell you. No reincarnation questions, gentlemen.
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it because it can only be a husband annulling the vow of a woman? So does that kind of support the metaphor that Hashem is the husband to the bride, Yisrael? Is that kind of...
There is such a metaphor. I don't know if it's connected over here. The reason the husband has that authority is because the wife has certain responsibilities to the husband, and therefore the wife is, to a certain extent, she is under his, she's got obligations to the husband, and anything that's going to compromise her efficiency, the husband has that veto right.
What if the husband takes a vow that compromises kind of the woman's role?
Only if it's a vow that compromises his obligation. The husband, and she does not have veto rights over the husband. That's all by the letter of the law, gentlemen. In real life, she can veto everything that you want to do. But by Torah law, you get used to it, Mayor. Right? They have the final say. That's the way it goes. When I was growing up, whenever I'd ask my father for something, Dad, could I do this, that, or the other? My father's standard line was, "I'm a buck private. Go ask the general." Right? That was a stand. That's how. Yeah. And that's how I raised my kids. So, the wife, by letter of the law, can't veto the husband's vows. But if you want to have a decent marriage, you'll learn very quickly that she does. Yeah. Go ahead, Bear.
When we're talking about the intention that perhaps was meant for something wrong, is there a source of perhaps or some way to say that in our Avodas Hashem, since we always struggle and perhaps there will be moments in which our intentions won't be so clean, and yet it ends up being good. So it's like
Okay, let's rephrase the question. What if you intend to do something good and it doesn't work out? Right here, you intended to do something bad in it. What if you intend to do something good and it doesn't work out? The answer is, and even more than that, if those of you who heard Rabbi Bloom speak on Yeshivat Ohr B'Tammuz, what's the worst crime a Jew could commit based on punishment? What's the worst crime you could commit? Idol worship is almost the worst. Adultery, idol worship, and immorality are all in that category. You got to give up your life. There's even one thing worse than that, which is what? That's all in the same category. That's also in the same category of murder. That's also the worst thing you could do is try to get somebody else to worship idols, because it's the only time in Torah that we find that entrapment is permissible. If, let's say, Reuven comes up to Shimon and says, "Hey, Shimon, let's go. I know some great idols. Let's go worship." Shimon is allowed to then hide witnesses. Normally in halacha, witnesses have to give a warning. And there's a court case where we try to find merit for him and get him off the hook. Somebody who's an inciter, what we call the pusher, or the dealer, he's allowed to hide witnesses. And then he says to Reuven, what did you want to do today? Reuven says, hey, let's go worship idols. The witnesses jump out from me. They hear him. They take him to Beis Din. There is no attempt whatsoever to get him off the hook, and he's executed because he's the dealer. He's the cancer in the group. That's what the raw, I'll get to you one second, Reuven. That's the raw letter of the halacha. That's the raw letter of the halacha. A person is a pusher, a dealer, specifically by idol worship, is the worst thing that a person could do based on the punishment. Because he is what's called a mesis unemediach. He's trying to incite. Now, did he succeed? Remember, the guy that he's trying to push to do the idol worship, he didn't do it in the end. In the end, he's the one who actually got him. He was the FBI plant who got him killed. So he didn't succeed. Yet he's considered the worst type of sinner possible. So if that's the truth when it comes to influencing people negatively, and we know that there's a principle that God rewards us for good things at a higher rate than he punishes for the averas, 500 to 1. 500 to 1 times. You remember what they talk about when you work overtime? What do you get? You get time and a half? Yeah. Right? Good thing you get 500 times over the negative. So if you try to influence somebody to do something good, to keep Shabbos or to study Torah or to go to Minyan, even if you don't succeed, so at the end of the day, you're going to be rewarded even more. Now, what if you tried to do something good? So the Gemara says, if a person tried to do a mitzvah, and something interfered with you where you couldn't do the mitzvah through forces beyond your control, you get rewarded as if you did the mitzvah. But that's not just daydream. It's not like, oh boy, there's something interfering with my tzedakah distribution. You know what it is? I haven't won the lottery just yet. It's interfering. It's forces beyond my control. Boy, if I had $500 million, I would be so generous, right? Boy, no, we're not talking about daydreams. We're not talking about it. We're talking about where you decided to go give somebody tzedakah, and on the way to giving him tzedakah, you got held up and somebody took away your money. Then you get the reward as if you gave the tzedakah, because that was circumstances beyond your control. Reuven, what were we going to ask, please?
Punishment for those on the subway.
I didn't hear you.
What is the punishment for those on the light rail who chant about fellow Jews worshiping Yeshka?
What is their punishment? Their punishment is beyond, if to the degree that a person knows. People they're like insiders. That's like insiders. It's not, the Gemara even talks about where Yeshka is. The Gemara mentions that Yeshka himself. Yeshka is the way we talk about Jesus. They say the Yiddish pronunciation is Yeshka, right? That's why Yeshka or Yeshu Hanotzri. The word Yeshu is actually an acronym. I'll get to you one second, Nathan. The word Yeshu is actually an acronym which stands for Yamach Shemo V'Zichro. May his memory and name be blotted out. Yeah. So I mentioned yesterday that besides being in trouble in the world to come, he was a hockey player in this world. You know that, Dave, don't you? He got nailed. He got nailed into the boards. Yeah, yeah. There's another version. Another version says he was penalized for cross-checking. But what it got whatever the case is, they're in trouble. The answer to your question, Reuven, is they're in trouble. And he is, according to the Gemara, he is soaking in a vat of hot excrement. That's how the Gemara puts it. Yeah, yeah, and not just excrement, hot excrement. So he's got problems, right? He's got issues. That's what the Gemara says about him. Okay, Nathan had a question first. Yeah, go ahead.
So with the modern time, we don't have a Sanhedrin that can put people, do.
No job satisfaction nowadays. Can't no execution. No, but yeah.
So if somebody who does become like a Jew for Jesus or whatever,
what happened today, guys? Oh, I guess we're talking about inciting. Yeah, go ahead.
Becomes a missionary or whatever. Could they do teshuvah and make
Everybody could do tshuva. Everybody could do tshuva. The problem, a person could do tshuva till their dying breath. The problem is, they ask a good question. The Gemara says that in a certain way, people, imagine you're a guy who has a fruit and vegetable shop and you cheat people in weights and measures. In a certain way, cheating people in weights and measures is worse than adultery. Now, if you're a thief and you're cheating people, I'm ripping you off on a scale in the store. So, it's not a death penalty, and I got to pay back. Adultery is potentially a death penalty. Yet, the Gemara says that a person who cheats people in weights and measures, the problem is that I could be ripping people off 5 grams each person. My scale is off by 5 grams. In the course of time, I make a nice amount of money on the difference, right? The problem is, who do I when I want to do tshuva, who do I return it to? I don't know. I've cheated so many people. I have no way to do tshuva. So the tshuva that a person does is you do something for the community. You build a shul or you build a mikveh, something that people could use as a way of atonement. It's not a perfect atonement. Whereas if a person commits an act of commits adultery, so a person has to do tshuva, where you do tshuva from your heart, and that takes back what you've done, so to speak. But ultimately, we don't have a Sanhedrin nowadays, so we can't put people to death. David, what do you ask?
Oh, I was going to ask, how is it that he's still there in the vat? Because I thought you could only do a year in Gehenna max.
Good question. For a year, what we call a year in Gehenna is for the average person. For the average person. That means the average guy who needs a little bit of laundering. So the maximum is a year. You're talking about your average, good, happy-go-lucky Jew who once in a while, maybe spoke a little lashon hara and maybe ate something with a questionable hechsher, and maybe, maybe wasn't nice to his parent. A little bit of that. But when you get the guys who are particularly ratty, so then they're in what the Christian concept of eternal damnation is a Torah concept. Yeah, they're in big trouble. Yeah, they got problems. Yeah, so it's what he called when somebody hits his thumb with a hammer, and he goes, oh, and yo, Yashka, there's a people there's a reason they're saying it, and their pain is nowhere near his pain. I grew up thinking that it was a bad word. I thought it was a curse word. I didn't, because that's the only time I ever heard anybody say that is when they were upset about something. So they said, as I thought, I didn't know till late, or Christ. I had no idea that means you know what that means? Yeah. It means it means the Christian one, the one who's been anointed. Yeah. That's what it means, the christened one. I had no idea. I thought it was a curse word. I had no idea. A guy takes a shot on the golf course, and all he does is he says, "Oh, crap." I had no idea. Yeah, go ahead, Dylan.
Wait, so it's my understanding that the Christianity really didn't start idolizing Yashka until about 300 years after. It's not really his fault.
No, he was a Mason. He was a Mason. According to there's a Talmudic. There is there's actually, I don't know how we got onto the subject, but if we're already here, we may as well toast them. There are censored versions of the Shas. The Christian censors in the Middle Ages were not happy about our reports of what happened to Yashka. And according to we have the uncensored versions, and they're printed out. And according to the uncensored versions, he was what's called a mechashef and a mesis and a mediach. According to one account, he was a sorcerer and he incited other people, and he'd pull people away. By all accounts, he was what's called a mamzer. He was a bastard, a halachic bastard. That means his mother had him from another man. The idea of the Immaculate Conception, which I don't even think is her, I think that's her mother or something. Immaculate, whatever it wasn't. Right? He had a father of flesh and blood, but it wasn't the one man who was married to his mother, which creates a problem. And he actually went to, according to one account, he went to Egypt that he carved Hashem's name into his skin and used that to perform all sorts of stunts, the impressive stunts that drew people after him. And there are all sorts of accounts. There is a certain amount of confusion in the years, whatever it is, but the Christians distorted everything, even the virgin birth. The virgin birth, because they translate the word in the Nach, which is the word is the Alma. It says then Alma will give birth. And Alma they translate as a virgin, which is not accurate. And Alma means a young woman. And that is accurate, that young women give birth, right? So that they got right, but the rest of it is all twisted and distorted. So that's whatever it was. Well, Ty Cobb's mother was 14, so that's not in the south of the United States. What do you call it? It's nothing unusual. Nothing unusual about it. LeBron James' mother was 16. So it's not at all unusual. Where girls used to get married very young because girls died earlier. Nowadays women outlive men. But at the time of the average lifespan for women, very often women died in childbirth, that sort of thing. Hey, gentlemen, I got to get to the doctor, so we're going to call it a day. I don't know how we got onto this subject, but it was good. Listen, that's all Torah. It's all Torah.